Hello everyone, welcome to Code with IJ, and today we are continuing our series on tips from Pragmatic Programmer by Andrew Holt, and we are on tip 16, and it says there are no final decisions. And I started wondering, what does it mean by there are no final decisions? Even though he explained it in the book, but from my own knowledge and from what I can gain, it's like you're building a house and you bought a land. The land is the project, very bare, nothing in place, and you as the business now you start thinking of amazing things that can go into this project. That's the same way you as the owner of the land, you start looking at the land's texture. Are you going to use the land for farming? Are you going to build a house on it? Is it going to be renting? Are you going to put the house up for sale? So you start looking at all these things just by buying the land. So that's it. So there are no final decision. Your decision is going to change. Maybe you see something working and somebody comes and say, "Oh, this thing cannot be in this land." It's going to change. That's the same way business logics are going to change. So make your business logic where you're coding something that can change. That's why most times in business logic we always use environmental variables, so that when you're changing the environmental variables, you don't break the whole code, because they can be using a partners today and tomorrow they have an issue with that partner and they tell you, "Oh, we are changing partner." As a developer, what will you do if you have coded? That means you have to pull down everything. That means the whole system has to come down for that change to take effect. So please learn there are no final decision in there are no final decision. Tip number 17 say use tracer bullets to find the target. So I was very, very curious on what is tracer bullet. So I just found out that tracer bullet is what soldiers use to track. So they use it to monitor. It's like I think it's almost like a sniper stuff. So they use it to mark those axes or something like that. I'm not too sure on what tracer bullet is. So anybody that has a very simple idea of what tracer bullet is, please come and tell me. But for my own understanding, is like we use tracer bullets to know flow by flow how each of those functionality is going to work in the system. You're building something before you start putting things together. When you're cooking, you first start saying, "Wait, what do I want to cook? I want to cook fried rice. Okay, I need carrot, I need this, I need that. How do I cut it?" So in tracer bullet, you're checking each functionality, you're checking each of the system flow to say, how does it work? It works where, okay, join it with this other flow. How does it work? So you're doing a connectivity because you're trying to make the code production ready. So the purpose is to know how the system work all together as a flow. And in our next chapter 8, it says prototype to learn. This one now, you're playing around with your code. You want to learn from the code instantly. You come to a new project and they give you a code like, okay, build this. You're going to work with us. This is our code base. I know so many. I When I started, I did that thing where we just dive into the code base and boom, we pick up a task. And the process of doing it, we are so lost because we don't even understand how does this logic connect to this logic. So you when you pick a project, pick it up, try to learn how each of those functions work, because your essence of that code is not for making production ready. It's to trash the code, but the main purpose of writing that code is to learn from it. So you're learning maybe that business logic of API integration with a bank. Maybe you are learning how rule management work. Maybe you are learning how library system is being connected. Maybe you are learning how expensive tracker is being built. Maybe you're learning anything, but prototype to learn is that your main focus is not for it to be perfect, it's not for it to be great, but it's for you to learn from it. Program close to the problem domain. When you say program close to the problem domain, I have a very experience that just came in new on this program close to the problem domain. So I wanted to work with someone in an Elixir project, and I wanted him to like recommend project for me. So I needed to do a test project with him, and he gave me a test case that carry out. I immediately just looked at the heading that says build an expensive tracker, and I'm like, "Oh, I've done a YouTube video on building an expensive tracker before. I know what goes into an expensive tracker. We need an expense table, we need a category, we need a user that expense table will go into. Oh, we can even do authentication so that we'll know which of the user is it a verified user that is coming into the system. I had all these things, and I'm like, oh, we can have debit and credit. I have an expense tracker on my phone. They have a debit and credit, and it makes me to know the total sum of my debit and the total sum of my credit for that month. And I started with all those logic in head. I built a small, I wrote a small structure of how the project is going to be like. I did all these things, and because the project said within 3 hours be done. 2 hours I was actually done with the project. I was so happy. I felt happy. I felt confident. My confidence level boosted. Like, wow, you've gone big. You're able to add this and add that. And I submitted the project. And when the review came, I got the review yesterday. And seeing the review, I stumbled down because I didn't even build close to the problem domain. I built an expensive tracker, but that's not what they wanted. And there was actually a test description of what I'm supposed to build. But because I wasn't even patient enough to read the whole mail throughout and probably look down and see if there was any attachment, I did not know that there was actually a description, and so many things I added in the project wasn't even needed, and so many things that were needed was not even added into the project, and that one alone just gave me a bad review on that particular interview I was doing. And I had to ask the person, please, can I reapply on this interview again? And he said, oh, not now, we need you to go, because from your experience with what you did, it shows you're not suited for the role you're trying to the role you have on your CV. And I'm like, I was shocked, but one great lesson I learned from that is that you have to be very, very conscious of the requirement. The business require the functional requirement. If there's a requirement in the project, let it be the sub thing you first of all draft out in your notepad before you build the project, because you are supposed to build to tailor and suit the problem domain. You're not supposed to build based on how fancy or how good you think that project will come out. You're supposed to build in order for the business to be able to promote that project, because them giving you a business requirement, then they have to also have given the marketing a business requirement of tailored and suited with what you are building. So if you build something totally, the marketers and every other person in that team cannot market that product or cannot understand the functionality or the usefulness of the product. So our last tip for today say estimate to avoid surprises. What does it mean? It means when you are coding or when you are building, make sure you're having a way that that code can be very, very simple and very, very flexible. So that if tomorrow the owner or your CTO comes and say, we are changing the whole payment gateway functionality, we want it to be this, you don't sit down and like, ah God, I've built this thing for 3 weeks and we are changing it overnight. And you're like, it's going to take a month. And I'm like, why are you taking a month? We are just changing XYZ on the project. And you are like, it's only XYZ people are thinking that, yeah, I have to change. I have to change A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. That means you were not, when you were coding, you were not thinking to avoid surprises. You were not planning that there's no final decision that can happen, that can take place in that project. You are not planning ahead of futuristic ideas that the business might have and want to impeach in that project. So thank you all for sticking to the end of this series today on estimate to avoid expenses, to avoid surprises. My name still remains Ijoma, and this is Code with Idea. Let's build smarter. Thank you. Subscribe and share to your family. See you next